if you focus on building a strong brand, that is always the fastest way to being able to charge a premium and to get off the hustle train.
Welcome to the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast, where we celebrate the art of balancing motherhood and business. I'm your host, Angela Marcouillier, and I hope your 2024 has started off well. Today, I am thrilled to bring you a special episode featuring a remarkable guest, Victoria Marcouillier. As a mom of 2 little girls and a seasoned entrepreneur scaling her branding and web design business, Victoria has mastered more than most of us the delicate dance between nurturing a family and a thriving career. In this episode, Victoria joins us to share her insights on creating a business that truly serves you. She unveils the secrets to crafting a brand that not only entices, but also resonates with your audience. Get ready to discover the importance of setting realistic expectations, too, for your current season of life as a mompreneur, as Victoria guides you through the journey of positioning your brand to unapologetically charge a premium. But that's not all. Victoria's wealth of experience extends to understanding the art of listening to your clients, ensuring that your business aligns seamlessly with their needs. As the host of the Branding Business School podcast and a seasoned podcast guest herself, Victoria brings a wealth of knowledge, and she's ready to empower you to navigate the world of mompreneurship. So whether you're a seasoned mompreneur or just starting your journey, join us as we dive into a conversation that promises inspiration, actionable tips, and a refreshing perspective on making more without the hustle. Get ready to embrace your role as a good enough mompreneur with our incredible guest, Victoria Marcouillier. Stay tuned and let's embark on this empowering journey together, and help me welcome Victoria to the podcast. I am so thrilled to have Victoria Marcouillier on the podcast today. Thank you and welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Angela. And you said my last name correctly, which is huge props to you. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Gold star for me today. Yeah. So let me give you a quick introduction. I mean, it's so impressive what you're doing, and I love your mission. So you're the creative director at Brandwell, which is now a multi-6-figure design agency. You're host of your own podcast, The Branding Business School. And you're the mom to 2 beautiful little girls. Oh my gosh, they're so adorable. And you have a mission to help women make more without the hustle, as well as show up more confidently online. So I love that.
That's what we do day in, day out.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. And for online business owners, I think that is such a huge hurdle. And so, I mean, I think that that's so important to help women do that, especially because, you know, it's just, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, usually like your mission comes from an obstacle that you overcame, right? And by no
Right.
means am I totally free of the hustle. I work very hard for my businesses now that I have a couple of them, but I do feel like I've come a long way from where I started, and I've learned a lot over my 5 years of owning a business. That it's not all about the hustle. Like there are things that you can do to truly have a business that serves you and doesn't steal from you. And so that kind of became my mission, was to, okay, how can I help other women figure this out? Because, I know for me, and we're going to talk about this a little bit today, but when I started having my daughters, you know, when I got pregnant almost 4 years ago, I knew what I wanted my life to look like. And I didn't know how it would all happen, but I've been very intentional over the last 4 years of how can I build a business that serves me and doesn't steal from me? What does that look like? And so, you know, I feel like I've just kind of been on the journey myself, and now I'm just inviting other women and moms along with me.
Yeah, I love that. So tell us a little bit, set the stage on how you started Brandwell.
Yeah. Okay. So it was 2018. And I started Brandwell similar to how a lot of entrepreneurs start their businesses. I had a skill. I was pretty good and like tech savvy. I could hop into Squarespace and throw up a website. I was actually working for a web design and marketing firm. At the time, I was working there for 4 years. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, you start to realize like, I could be doing this on my own. Like, do I really need to be making more money for somebody else? Or like, what if I was just doing this, working with the people I wanted to work with and kind of doing it my way? I was raised by entrepreneurial parents too. So that was kind of just in my DNA. And I think I always knew I wanted to have my own business. You know, the many, many little startups that I did between high school and Brandwell would be a testament to that I just had entrepreneurship in my DNA, but it's not always the first idea that sticks. That was very much my experience. And so I was working at this web design company. I was designing websites and managing accounts for the company specifically did like physical therapy practices, which that was something I think it's like a wonderful thing, but like I myself have never had physical therapy. I was primarily working with like grown men. You know, by the time you're opening your own practice, you're typically 40s, 50s, 60s. And it was like a very male dominated industry. And I just remember thinking like, I love what I do. I'm really good at what I do here. But what if I got to do it for like people that really valued design and that like really valued aesthetics and understood branding and people that like I could maybe even relate to a little bit more. And that was when I started freelancing. And so I just started, you know, building a website for anyone who was willing to not even pay me. I did my first couple websites, you know, pro bono for family members. And then, you know, from there, I started to realize like, okay, this is a service people want and need. And I think where I kind of started to develop the whole idea for Brandwell with at least what Brandwell is known for today is kind of like the go-to web design company for like female entrepreneurs, is I was designing for women because I felt like all of my friends were starting businesses. You know, there's been over the last 10 years and it's been awesome and largely due to social media and how that has kind of lowered the barrier to entry for starting a business. But like everyone was starting a business online, but so many of them were quitting after like the first year or not even making it to a year. And I think some of it was they had the skill, but they had no way of showcasing that skill or their professionalism or like what they had to offer online in a way that made people want to spend money with them, you know? And that was where I was like, hey, I can help you. Like you're making these earrings, they're beautiful. I know no one's buying them, but I could actually help you build a website where people will buy them. And so, you know, things just kind of spiraled from there. And I freelanced for about 1 year and then I quit my full-time job and gave my all to Brandwell. And that was 4 years ago now, and kind of never looked back.
That's fabulous. I mean, I just love that you had that courage and you realize sometimes it's so hard for especially women we take our talents for granted. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you saw that and you're like, hey, I think I've got something here is so inspiring. And I know, you know, just because you can do something easily and well doesn't mean that other people won't pay you a lot to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that it's not special. So I love that. But I love too, you said something that was really interesting, that you knew how you wanted your life to look. Like you had this idea. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you had this vision for your life? Because I think it's so important to create a business that serves you and fits in that vision. And sometimes people are so stunted on like even giving themselves permission to have the life that they want.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how did you have that?
Yeah. Well, and when I say, like a business that serves you and doesn't steal from
Mhm.
you, I don't just mean that like I want this business that just produces money for me every
Right.
month and I'm very hands off. Like I really meant like I want something that, fills my cup, a creative outlet for me, an area where I feel like my talents are getting put to good use.
Mhm.
And really something that like serves my family in the way that it does provide additional income. Maybe it allows me to be a better mom. I'm sure a lot of
Mhm.
people on your podcast talk about that, but
Yeah.
I do feel like, getting to still have something and some identity outside of just, the person who, changes the diapers and makes the bottles all day long. Like that's been really life-giving to me. And I feel like it makes me enjoy my kids more. So to answer your question, I think a lot of like what helped me set this vision for like what I wanted my life to look like was just a lot of how I was raised. I was raised in just such a loving home. My mom, I mentioned that my parents were both entrepreneurs. And what was so cool about that, like my dad worked harder than anyone I know. He still does. He's in his mid 60s, doesn't need to work a day in his life, but he's still buying franchises, doing all these businesses, and he just loves work. And so modeled for me at a very young age, I got to see the freedom and the flexibility that entrepreneurship allotted to a family. My mom, I would never, and she hates this, but like I would never refer to her as like a working mom because she was always there. She was always the one taking me to school. She was always the one picking me up. I don't have like any memories of my young childhood of my mom dropping me off at a daycare and leaving, all day and me being with a nanny. That just like wasn't a part of my childhood. And I really loved my childhood, so all of that to say though, my mom actually did have an interior design business growing up, and she had that freedom to do it when we were in school or like have those phone calls after we went to bed. And so I grew up really totally oblivious to the fact that she was working and she was contributing to our family because she was meeting all of my needs, and I just remember like as I got older, and especially as I've had my young children now, realizing like what a gift that was both to me and to her, because she still got to do something she loved. She didn't have to like totally sacrifice everything about her life pre-kids when she had her first baby, but she was just a very wonderful and present mother. So that was very much the life I wanted to create for my kids. And I come from a family of 3 girls. So far I have 2 girls, so we'll see if I can keep the tradition going. But I really want, as my girls get older, right now my oldest is 3.5, my youngest is 1, so we're in the thick of it. But as they get older, I would love for them to not remember me for like, oh yeah, my mom owned this incredible business for female entrepreneurs like Brandwell. Like I hope she's inspired by that, but I hope that she knows like I was always there for her, and so when I got pregnant with my daughter Maya 4 years ago, that was when I quit my full-time job. So I was working full-time, I was side hustling Brandwell. I got pregnant and I was like, okay, I now's the chance to like dive in head first and see if I can make this work, because I knew that having my own business was actually going to afford me a lot more flexibility to be the type of mom I wanted to be than if I would have stayed at my comfortable, very good salary full-time job. So yeah, I think my vision was really just to have a business and continue doing what I loved, but do it in a manner that gave me a bit more flexibility to be the type of mom that I really wanted to be.
Mhm. That's so amazing. I mean, your mom was way ahead of her time, and you're so lucky to have that example
Yeah.
because, I feel like so many of us are trying to reinvent what it looks like to be a working mom
Yeah.
and have a business. And I mean, that's just incredible that you had that example and that, you put your children first and yourself first. You knew that you wanted to be there for them and you created a business that allowed you to do that. And that's just so inspiring because we get so connected to we have to have the corporate job and we have to have the title. And there's no way we could possibly create a business that didn't need us 24/7 and we didn't have to hustle at all the time to be there for our family. And so I want to definitely dispel this myth. So, can you talk about more how we can build businesses with less hustle so we can create that space and time for our families?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love talking about this because, again, I haven't mastered this. And
Sure.
I certainly hustled a lot when I was starting my business, and I talk about this a lot on my own podcast, that like, I think there is a necessary hustle or struggle involved in starting anything new.
Hmm.
I don't want to be preaching this idea that you can, have this incredible business and just like snap your fingers and the dream clients are all running to you. Like, that's very rarely how it starts, right? Like, Brandwell, it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I was one of the lucky ones in terms of like the whole working mom thing, where I had at least validated the concept. I had kind of gotten Brandwell off the ground before I had my first baby. And I really was more like going into the scaling stage when my first baby arrived. So, I mean, it was hard either way. Brandwell had only been around for about a year and a half by the time I had my first baby. But I do think that that was almost a gift also, that because I had just started my business and then immediately I got pregnant, I had to start thinking more strategically about like every decision in my business. And this is where I want to encourage the female entrepreneur. A lot of times we just do what we see everybody else doing, and we think that that's going to work for our business. Oh, success leaves a trail, and like that is true in some instances, but some things are very specific to your business and your clients and your industry. And rather than just looking at other web designers and doing everything they were doing, they opening template shops and selling courses and hosting live trainings, like all these different things, rather than doing all of that, asking myself, what's going to move the needle for my business right now? I don't have a lot of time, right? I'm pregnant. I have 9 months to figure out how to build systems and put people in place so that this thing can operate with me when I'm on maternity leave. If I even took one, I didn't really take one for my first baby. I'll be honest about that, but I did for my second baby. And so I think being really intentional about the decisions that you make for your business is important if you feel like you're hustling. Because I think there's like a necessary hustle in the beginning when you're getting something off the ground. But then, like, it is our job as business owners to be able to look at the data and see what it's telling us. Like, okay, is creating reels really working for my business? Or is it just kind of scratching my itch of getting those likes on Instagram, right? Like, are you getting new clients from all the reels that you're creating or not? That might not be where you should spend 4 hours of your week in front of your camera filming reels, and that's just one example, but there are so many other examples. Like, one of the things that I think has been a huge asset to me as I've scaled Brandwell for as long as I can remember, for pretty much the entirety of my business, we have had 3 offerings. We offer, well, 2 really. One is a bundle, but branding and website design. And then you can bundle those together, and that is our 3rd package. And even though, I've watched a lot of other people increase their offerings and have a million different services and things like that, it made sense to me to just keep doing what was working. And not to say that had I branched out and added new services and different offerings, that it wouldn't have helped me grow the business, but it definitely would have kind of scattered my priorities and scattered my attention. And I've been doing this with a toddler and now a new baby at home, and I couldn't afford to have my attention scattered. So I think one of the things that we can do to stop hustling a little bit more is to just look at like the data, what is working in your business, what are the needle movers, and just start trimming away all the fluff. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so much stuff I think that's unnecessary for the online business owner now.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I'm just like really passionate about, saying, so you don't have to do everything that so-and-so is doing. And
Mhm.
we'll talk about that a little bit more later down the line too, when we're talking about branding and whatnot. But that is one of the first ways I would say. The second thing, and I actually got to give a speech on this topic in New York this summer when I went up to Squarespace to speak at their event, Circle Day. And, you can always be working to make your product better, to make your customer experience better so that you can raise your prices and kind of stop that trade of time for money. But what I shared in that speech is that and I believe this with my whole heart. It's not just because I own a brand design business, but if you focus on building a strong brand, that is always the fastest way to being able to charge a premium and to get off the hustle train. If you look at it, like there's leggings and then there's Lululemon. Okay. There's sunglasses and then there's Prada. If you want to take it more to like a small business level, there's wedding photographers and then there's Caitlin James. I think a lot of your listeners might know who she is. So having the brand, like that goodwill of your brand associated to your product or service, is always going to allow you to charge way more. And people are going to happily be willing to pay it because they're buying into a brand. They're not just buying the product or the service itself. So that's really in the last couple of years where I've tried to leverage brand power in my business so that I don't feel like I'm always trading time for money, so that I can really get into that scaling stage and be the type of mom that I want to be while also having a thriving business.
Mm-hmm. So much goodness in what you just said. I mean, I just love that one of the most important things that you talked about is not doing what you think everybody else is doing, and at some point you realized you had to like get quiet with yourself and go, what works for me and what works for my situation with my young daughters and my time and energy that I have.
Yeah.
And so often I see it, and it's so easy to get caught up in, well, everybody so and so is doing, this and that and the other thing, so should I. But like you said, not only is everybody's business different, but you are different too. Everybody's situation is different, and you really have to dig deep and figure out what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And what
I love that you said that. Well, even you and I, like you have kids that are 16 and 10. I have kids that are 3 and 1. Mm-hmm. So my season looks really different. And, having young children, my oldest goes to preschool 2 days a week. But other than that, my girls are home with me all week. And, my season is going to come with different limitations than fast forward 3 years when they're in kindergarten and they're going to school 5 days a week, mm-hmm. So I had to remind myself a lot of that. And I hope that like, that is the message that people get through this podcast too, that like, maybe now if you're like me and you're in a season of like having littles, don't put the pressure on that everything has to happen right now. Because this is a hard season. Like there are so many times where I'm like, God, why did my business and my family kind of take off at the same time? I certainly didn't really plan it this way. It's just kind of how it happened. And it's hard, this like balance thing is hard. But I think that there's such comfort for me too, to just like take that pressure off sometimes and say that like, my life is going to look different at different stages. My business is going to look different at different stages. So just always being able to get honest with yourself. Like, what are my priorities right now? Like as much as I want my business to continue to thrive and grow and scale, like at the end of the day, my ultimate priority is my family. And if I feel that, the growth is causing me to be away from my family too much, or it's causing too much stress on our family, then I need to be able to say like, okay, we're going to pump the brakes, and know that in a few years, like I'll have all the time in the world compared to what I have now to invest in this business and grow it. But I won't get these years back with my little ones, So that's kind of my perspective on it. I know it's not everyone's perspective on it, but I feel that message needs to be out there on the internet a little bit more, because there's a lot of talk about how it's hard and, kids are a distraction, but also like, you're not going to get these years back, So I think I would be more regretful to look back on my life and think that I, didn't spend a lot of time with my girls for the sake of scaling my business, than to look back and say, I made $100,000 less because I was with my girls. Like, what's more important to you,
Oh, yeah. And, quite honestly, I do a time audit every quarter because I'm looking forward to later in the month and next month not sitting in car line for hours a week. So, I mean, it's like sometimes you even have these little micro pockets where you can optimize your time and do things differently, even beyond like your children's ages. I'm always looking to optimize like, where can I do things differently? And I mean, I think for women, it's so hard because we're conditioned to be such people pleasers and we want to do everything and take care of everybody. And so if this can be a reminder to set those boundaries and realize your priorities. And I don't know, for me, somebody said something that just struck a chord with me, that you don't owe anybody anything other than your immediate family.
Yeah.
And we just get into the, like, on a treadmill of just trying to do all the things and not realizing our priorities. And, yeah, like when kids start having more meltdowns and you're feeling more tired, definitely check in and
Yeah.
go, okay, what's not working? How can we change things? And that's really the beauty of being a business owner, that you can do
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
I mean, yeah, and you'll never get this time back.
Yeah.
So it's so important. So I think those were really great tips. And so, how can we kind of use this sense of dropping the hustle?
Hmm.
So we're going, okay, we don't need to please everybody. I don't need to hustle all of the time. But then how can we still scale our businesses?
Hmm. Okay, so I think we can talk about brand positioning a little bit more,
Hmm.
because that's obviously how I believe I've been able to scale my
Hmm.
business without a lot of hustle. So knowing that what we talked about, people are willing to pay more for you
Hmm.
because of your brand name,
Hmm.
then if you're making more, you usually don't have to sell as much, right? So we'll just use the example of web design. If, I'm charging 3 times more now than what I did a couple of years ago in my business, I could essentially work with a third less people, right? And make the exact same amount. So that for me, it means less time. It means like having to
Hmm.
hire less employees, things like that. So that's really where I've put my focus and where we really help our clients through, the Branding Business School, which is my educational side of the business, and then through Brandwell, is like, hey, we want to help you build a brand that allows you to unapologetically charge a premium.
Hmm.
And we can get into charging your worth and things like that, because I know
Sure.
that's very much like a
Hmm.
buzz phrase on social media and stuff, and I push back on it a little bit because I think it's widely misunderstood. But having a brand that allows you to charge a premium, I do think allows you to get off the hustle train more than any of these other like systems or methods that we preach. So of course you can time block, of course you can batch work, but for moms, sometimes that information is not helpful, because for me, when people tell me to like, oh, just batch work your podcast, I'm like, I would love to batch work my podcast, but I work for an hour at a time, right? Like I work, like you said, when I'm waiting in the car line,
Hmm.
during nap time, which nap time is unpredictable these days. So sometimes some of these tips that might work for like your everyday entrepreneur are a little bit difficult to apply as mothers. So I think that really the best thing that you can do is to focus on branding. So let me explain it just so people understand the definition, because I think that branding is wildly misunderstood, especially amongst female entrepreneurs. But brand positioning, let's talk about brand positioning. This is something that takes place 100% in the mind. This is how your audience, like how your specific target demographic that you're trying to reach, how they think about you and like how you are remembered and what you're remembered for. But you have to be intentional about how you position your brand. So that comes down to, first off, whose mind are you trying to position your brand in? Like so many entrepreneurs, we get started, and in the same way that I started my business. So I'm not even saying that this isn't the way to start, but the sooner you get this right, the faster your business will scale. Is we start our business willing to offer the product or the service to anyone who's willing to buy it. But this is a really good way for slow growth, because when you have something that's for everybody, it's really for nobody. Nobody's going to resonate with it and be like, yes, I am willing to pay above market value for that because I know it's for me. No, they're going to be price shopping you. If you have a service that feels general, then you're going to be competing on price alone. And if you're trying to stop hustling, the goal would be to not compete on price, because let's be real, it's 2024 at the time that this is coming out, and every industry is pretty saturated. And so it's hard not to compete on price alone. But
Hmm.
when you have a strong brand, when people remember you as the person who is specifically suited to solve their unique pain points, that's the person who's going to happily pay a premium for whatever it is that you're selling. So it really comes down to being willing to niche down. And I know that like that's talked about a lot, but I think it's talked about a lot, but not a lot of people do it. In the same way, I started my business serving everyone, but over the years, as I got to know, like, okay, what am I really good at? Who's getting the best results working with me? Who's walking away from Brandwell singing our praises? That's who I need to find more of, right? So as I started to refine my brand's message, refined our imagery, refined kind of everything to speak to that woman, that service-based female entrepreneur, who was struggling to show up confident online because she was embarrassed by her DIY website, everything got so much easier for me because I knew who I was speaking to. And when you know who you're speaking to, you can just speak a whole lot more articulately to them, right? And you can, if you niche down and you have a smaller target audience, it's a lot easier to get to know their pain points, to get to know their season of life. Like even you, the fact that you have this podcast that's specifically geared towards, the mompreneur, like you are able to really understand, you're not just talking to women, right? Like you're able to really understand what are the struggles that mothers who also own businesses are facing. And you can use language that they connect with on like an emotional level. And selling at the end of the day is an emotional thing. So the more you niche down, the more you get to know who you're selling to, I think the more effectively you're going to be able to craft a brand's message that's going to resonate with them at a much deeper level, making them want to pay a lot more to work with you or to buy from you. It's this whole idea of like, people don't pay premiums to work with generalists, right? Like if I want to hire a photographer to come shoot my newborn in my house, I'm going to find somebody that specializes in newborn photo shoots because it's different, right? Like you got to be able to deal with a screaming baby and the mom's nursing halfway through the session. Like there are a lot of things that take place during a newborn session that otherwise don't take place for maybe somebody who's used to shooting couples and engagements, right? So I would be willing to spend more for somebody who specializes in newborns than I would for somebody who's just a general photographer. And the same is true no matter the industry. The more you can specialize and kind of differentiate and get clear on who you're speaking to, you're going to be able to raise your prices and you're going to be able to work less because of the extra income that will be coming in through your raised prices.
Yes. What's really interesting is I almost 100 episodes and nobody has explained branding quite like that. And so I appreciate that. I think it's so difficult to wrap your head around. And, I talk to clients and people about niching down, and I use that specific example that had I created a podcast that was just about entrepreneurship, or even female entrepreneurship, I don't think it would have gotten the traction that it did in the short amount of time, because it was like the things that mom entrepreneurs deal with. I mean, I've had people tell me that they were told if they were really serious about their business, they needed to hire a nanny. And there are moms that don't want to hear that. They want to be able to serve their family and have a business and not need a nanny necessarily. So
I think there are other options, and that's what I've tried to show people. Like for some people, that is the option. I understand that in my business, this is working for me, but largely through the systems, the people. I've hired a lot of people that I've put in place, and then the brand power that I have. And I think that can apply to a lot of other women's and industries and your situation and stuff. But that's where I started to get a little bit more outspoken on my own podcast and on this topic of working motherhood, because I felt like that was the only option that kept getting presented to me. If you want to be the successful CEO, you need daycare or a full-time nanny. And for me personally, my conviction that just didn't sit right with me. Again, so much goes into how we were raised, and that wasn't my experience. So I don't know anything other than my own experience. And I loved my experience. So I wanted to create something similar for my daughters. And I've done everything I can to try and build a business that allows me to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I know you have the branding business school, but can you give us some tips on how we can zero in on how we can find our niche and our brand voice that can help us better connect with our clients? And like you said, it is the first time I've heard somebody say focusing on your brand is going to help you scale your business. I mean, it's like, ah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I hope that it allows people to feel a little bit of freedom in
Yeah.
that the answer is not to hustle more, post more on social media, or send more email blasts. If you're doing all of that, if you're posting on social media and you're sending email blasts, but the message is falling short and people are not connecting on an emotional level, which is what I think branding allows you to do,
Mm-hmm.
then you're hustling and it's really not going to produce anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say before all of those other things, which are often put first, that you get really clear on your brand. And so you asked, how can we tangibly do that? So the first thing, the first piece of advice I would give to any entrepreneur who's really trying to figure out their brand and get this right, number one is just to stop looking at everybody else in your industry. Because, and I'm guilty of this too. I totally did this. Like one of the mistakes that I think I made early on was latching on to another web designer who I just, and still to this day, now we're friends, which is cool. But like, I thought she was just so amazing and I loved her business model. And I wanted to create Brandwell similar to what she had done. And that's what I think a lot of particularly female entrepreneurs do, because we're all on social media. We're all following each other's journeys.
And the
And
algorithm starts sending you everybody who's doing what
yeah,
you're
the
doing.
algorithm's like, you need more of this, you need more of this.
Right.
And so what I think that does though is subconsciously and sometimes consciously, we start to like attach ourselves to that person who's just like a few steps ahead of us, maybe 10 steps ahead of us in their business. And maybe we even relate to them. Like, this is somebody who has young kids and they're scaling the business. So it's like, yeah, I'm super motivated by this person. But what happens is we start to copy them and our brands start to look alike. Our social media feeds start to look alike. Our messaging starts to sound similar. Our pricing looks the same, but a little bit less because we know that we're not quite as good as they are. And so this is like the fastest way to kill your brand, the authenticity of your brand. So something that I've done over the years that I'm really proud of, and I would really encourage anyone to do this, is like put your blinders on. I don't follow a lot of web designers on social media. I don't know if I really, at least in my algorithm, I can't think of one that comes up on a regular basis. And that's not because I want to be ignorant to the trends or the times or like what's going on, but it's because I know myself. And I think this is true of a lot of women and just how we're made up. But it's hard not to compare. And it's hard not to see the shiny thing that somebody else is offering, be like, I should do that too. And it's really hard to build a brand when you're taking bits and pieces of other people's brand, and trying to put it all together. So what's better is to focus on you, yourself, your skill set, and the customers that you have, whether you're one or two customers who were friends of the family, or whether you've been doing this for years and you have hundreds of customers. Obviously, the more customers you have, the easier it is to start to build your brand, because I think your customers will tell you everything you need to know about your brand.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I've been really intentional about, and still to this day am so intentional about, is listening to the women that I'm serving. And it gets a little harder now because I don't design for our clients at Brandwell. I have, a team of designers that do all that. But part of why I've never fully given up the role of sales, where I've delegated almost everything in my business, and I do have somebody else helping me with sales, but I love to talk to people as they're coming in the door and say, why did you choose Brandwell? Like, there are so many other web designers out there, even web designers that are geared for the female entrepreneur. Why did you choose Brandwell? And I start to pick up on the things that they're highlighting, the strengths of ours that they're highlighting. And you know what I do after so many phone calls when I have with these women? After learning why they chose Brandwell, I go and I update my website copy and I use the same language that they're using, because I know that if they had that pain point and they felt Brandwell could solve it, probably there's another woman right behind them that has the same pain point. And now I can speak to it a little bit more clearly, a little bit more articulately, so they know Brandwell is the right person to solve this problem for you. For our clients, it's the problem of not that they don't have a website and they need one, but that they're embarrassed by their online presence, that we can give them confidence that they don't have right now as an entrepreneur. And by doing that, I said in my speech at Squarespace, and it's kind of become like a buzz phrase that's been quoted a lot, is I started charging a premium in my business when I realized I was selling confidence, not websites. And that's where I really want to encourage people, as you're defining your brand, your brand needs to be built on selling something bigger than just a product or service, right? Because websites, like we could argue that that's a really powerful thing, right? Like every business owner needs it. It can drive massive revenue for your business. But what if I'm selling earrings? Like, how am I going to have this really strong brand if all I'm doing is selling earrings? Well, you got to figure out what is the benefit, like what is the value on somebody's life when they buy these earrings, and make that more the center of your messaging, instead of just the fact that you sell earrings, because there's a lot of people out there selling earrings. So I think it's really listening to your customers, figuring out why they're coming to you, and then not being afraid to niche down and get really, really specific with who you're serving, because when you do, you're just going to get to know that audience really, really well. And you'll be able to build a brand that really speaks to them.
I love that. And, and shifting who you're listening to and who you're focusing on, it makes such a big difference. And we can't talk about branding that we don't have a conversation about social media. And don't be afraid to curate your social media to suit you. When it comes to, you don't owe anybody anything, you don't owe your connections anything. They shouldn't take it personally. You have to focus on you. And I love that I recently became a confidence coach because I started listening to my clients saying, I don't have the confidence to show up in my business or to start a business. So we're going to be doing some new offers and some new things around that. So I love that. And just confidence is such an epidemic, lack of confidence.
Yeah.
So
The imposter syndrome, which comes from the comparison. We always think
partially
there will always be somebody who's further along or who makes more than you or who's better at your skill than you. Like that will always be there. So if we don't address that and just figure out what am I good at, what can my differentiators be with my brand, and then just go with that. Like that's how you really create an authentic brand. And people, I think more than ever, are craving authenticity. Like speaking of social media, I love that you said that, because I totally agree. Like when I was following a lot more designers, brand designers, web designers, like all of them, their grid was like so overly curated. Like everything kind of looked the same. And I was like, to me, it didn't really make sense. Like I understand they're trying to maybe look credible as a designer, right? Because it's really pretty, it's really aesthetic. But how is that going to resonate with like the different industries that we serve or the different styles that our clients have? Because I always tell our clients, like, I don't ever want you to walk away with a website and someone say, oh, that's a Brandwell website. Like the website better scream your brand, your personality, not mine. So, our social media, I would argue, is a little bit like uncurated for a design agency, but I think it shows the personality of our clients, and that's what allows other clients to relate to it and be like, oh, like I see myself in this person who just worked with Brandwell, so I'm going to therefore work with Brandwell. So I love that you kind of put that piece of advice out there. Like, don't worry so much about everything being so curated. Just like be authentic.
Yeah, no, it's so true. We just keep getting further and further away. We keep looking outside of ourselves for that answer.
Yeah.
It's right there. If you just get really quiet, we have to learn how to trust ourselves and get really clear on what we offer the world that's unique and different and special. And you can go from there. So it's so important.
Yeah.
But so how have you, I want to talk about too the branding business school. I mean, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to learn more about it. So how is that kind of, you saw this need to help people show up, women especially show up unapologetically and charge their worth. So let's talk, I'd love to hear your opinions about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll kind of answer all of those, but yeah. So we'll start with the charging your worth, because my hot take on this, it might ruffle some feathers. I think there is such a movement online where we're always being told, just charge your worth, charge your worth. But what does that even mean? And I think that it's a really good way to feel like icky when you're selling, or to feel imposter syndrome when you're selling. If you think that charging your worth is just about how much money you want to make per hour, I believe that charging your worth is so much more about the value that your product or service will have on the customer than it is about what you want to make per hour.
Right.
And that's why I have been able to, continually raise my prices over and over and over again and not feel icky about it, not feel bad about it, because the longer I do this, the more I believe in the value of what I'm selling. I'm watching it transform people's businesses, right? I'm watching their confidence transform as they walk away with a brand that they're proud of or a website that they're proud of. So that's kind of my hot take. I think a lot of people are charging their worth because they're like, well, I should be worth making more than $20 an hour, or I should be able to, work the 4-hour work week. There's like, just, I don't know. I find it to be a little bit toxic, but there's this whole movement on social media where we're like devaluing hard work, and it's just all about like making the quick buck. And it's very, I don't know, I feel like narcissistic. And that's, again, family of origin, how I was raised. Like, that's not how I was raised. Like, I was raised by a dad who really pushed work ethic, in a wonderful and loving way. But like, we were taught if we wanted to make money, we had to work. I didn't get an allowance. I had to do chores to earn my money. And I'm really grateful for that now. So I think that there's like something wonderful about, just working hard and being productive. But I also think, that charging your worth, is just not about like wanting to make more and not having to work. So I really encourage my clients and students at the Branding Business School, which I'll talk about next. I really encourage them to figure out, like, get to the root of what is the value, what is the benefit of the thing that you are selling, because that's going to make you where I say we help you unapologetically charge a premium. Anyone can raise their prices, add a zero to the end of your package and there you did it. But if you're finding that you're getting on sales calls and your customers questioning is like driving the price back down, or you're having to discount your services all the time, then we're not unapologetically charging a premium, right? And I think the best way to do that is to have conviction around what it is that you're selling. And the only way to do that is to talk to your customers, to know what is the benefit. My sales coach, who is one of the educators at the Branding Business School, I started working with her a couple of years ago, and something that was really life-changing that she shared with me was to stop focusing on selling the features and focus on selling the benefits. So as it relates to a website, instead of SEO giving you the ability to show up online without spending money on ads, instead of copywriting, like as a line item, a feature of what we offer, we help you craft a message that will connect to your audience on an emotional level, allowing you to charge more for what you're selling, instead of a website selling confidence to these women. So, it's really figuring out, like, instead of just trying to sell all these bells and whistles, all these features, how can I tie these features to a direct outcome or benefit in the life of my customer? Because that's why they're going to spend the money with you. Other companies, have the same features that you do, but only you, and depending on how well you get to know your customers, only you can really speak to the benefits and the outcome of what that feature is going to do for your customers. So why I started the Branding Business School was because for the last 5 years, I've been designing brands and websites for these female service-based entrepreneurs. And we have a very, like, I wouldn't say rigorous, but just a very structured process that we go through with every client to make sure that the end result is a brand that's going to serve their business, a brand that's going to attract the right audience. And so we ask them a lot of these questions, like, how are you different from somebody else who offers what you have to offer? Why should somebody choose you over somebody else? What is your mission? And sadly, most of our clients did not know how to answer this confidently. And honestly, a lot of them, they were like very sophisticated clients. They had been in business for 5 years or so. And I feel like a lot of people turn to branding. They hire a brand designer, they hire a web designer, invest a lot of money thinking that's going to be the quick fix or the cure-all. But if you don't know who you're serving, if you don't really understand branding in the fullest sense of the word, in your differentiators, in your messaging, in, yes, your aesthetic and how you show up there, but there's so much strategy behind branding that I felt like my customers, my clients didn't get. So really, it was an idea I had just to serve clients of Brandwell. Like, okay, hey, we're going to serve you on the visual side of branding through Brandwell, but I want to also serve you on the educational side of the strategic branding through the Branding Business School. And then we've decided 3 times a year, we'll open it up to the public so that everyone can get access to this information. But that's really where it came from. I just felt like there's such utter confusion around what it means to brand your business. And I want people to be able to leverage the same brand power that I've been able to use in my business to get where I am today so that they can scale their businesses without all of the hustle.
Yeah. And you said the word serve so many times, and you have definitely just reiterated your focus on providing value and the client instead of being you focused and your business focused. And I just find that when entrepreneurs look at their clients and their need to serve that way, that's going to serve you in the longevity of your business and your impact. And so I hope listeners picked up on that, because that's definitely what I'm hearing. So, I mean, I think that that's just really something we all need to continually remind ourselves to focus on the people that we serve. So yeah, I know we're running short on time already. But like, what takeaway would you want listeners to this podcast to walk away with if they just remembered one or two things?
Yeah. And sorry, we're running short on time. I tend to be long-winded. I'm
No,
working.
that's okay. I mean, that's the
That's
sign
why
of
I
a
have
great
a podcast.
conversation.
So I think that the biggest takeaway for the working mom would be to stop comparing, not just in the sense of, copying the competition and how that detracts from your brand, but to stop comparing to people who are in different seasons of life as you too. Because this is the message I needed to and continually need to hear, that I don't have to do all the things right now while I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Like, I can do what's right for me in my business. But I don't, there are so many goals I have. There are so many dreams I have, other things I want to create and stuff. And I'm having to set them aside temporarily just to acknowledge my season of life. And I have to be careful the words and the voices that I let impact me, because like you said, a lot of people might push back and be like, no, Victoria, go after your goals, set aside, get a nanny, get daycare, set aside whatever, issues you have with that, and just chase your dreams. But if I'm being honest, like, my real goal is to have a thriving family more than my thriving business. So I'm trying to find more voices that will just say, like, don't compare your journey to everybody else's. You don't have to have it all in this season right now. So I hope that people maybe will come away feeling the freedom to either slow down or speed up, like wherever you're at. Maybe you are in a season where you have a bit more to give, a bit more time to invest in your business, and you can really throw yourself into crafting your brand and hustling a little bit to scale your business. But also, like, I don't know, I think it's just really refreshing to be able to hear that, like, it's okay to have a slow season like that. For me, coming off of building the branding business school and raising another baby over this last year, just kind of going from 1 kid to 2 kids, 1 business to 2 businesses. Like, I am going into 2024 knowing this is going to be a year of slowing down. Doesn't mean my business necessarily has to slow down, but I am going to. And if that means I have to hire more designers, I have to outsource more tasks, then I'll do it, but I know what, like, my family and myself need right now. And that's for me to not have so many new things happening all the time. So I just think, yeah, it's okay to not compare yourself to everybody else and just to acknowledge the season that you're in right now.
100%. I love that so much. Thank you so much for your time and carving out time in your busy schedule to have this conversation. I appreciate it so much. I've learned a lot from you. And I'm sure the audience will go, where can I connect with Victoria? Because she's got a lot of great information. And so if somebody wants to connect with you, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is brandwelldesigns.com. The branding business school is actually, I mentioned we open it to the public 3 times a year. The next launch is February 19th. So that may be around when the time this podcast airs. And on Instagram, it's either Brandwell Designs or the Branding Business School. So Brandwell Designs, we focus on the brand visual side of things, and the Branding Business School, we focus on the brand strategy side of things. So those are the two places that you'll find me throughout the week.
Awesome. Thank you, Victoria, so much. It's been such a great conversation. I appreciate
You
it so
too,
much.
Angela. Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this inspiring episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur Podcast with our incredible guest, Victoria Marcouillier. We hope you found valuable insights and actionable tips to fuel your journey as a mompreneur. If you resonated with Victoria's wisdom and want to dive deeper into the world of branding and business, be sure to check out the Branding Business School podcast hosted by Victoria herself, as well as the Branding Business School, which is opening its doors soon. So be sure to check out the links in the show notes for more information on that as well. Remember, as a mompreneur, it's not about perfection, but about finding what works for you and your unique journey. Embrace the art of balancing motherhood and business, and know that you are not alone in this endeavor. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback fuels our mission to empower mompreneurs like you. Don't forget to share this episode with fellow mompreneurs who could use a dose of inspiration. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with stories, strategies, and support for navigating the rewarding yet challenging world of being a good enough mompreneur. Until next time, I'm your host, Angela Marcouillier, and keep thriving in both your business and motherhood. You've got this. I can't wait to talk to you next time. Bye.